if we are going to be wise, we need to deepen in. We need to look underneath the obvious, beyond the obvious, into the obvious. And that's what deliberation, the definition of deliberation I'm using here, is anything which is where people are thinking carefully. That is, they're not being sloppy about their assumptions and perspectives. They're being mindful and heartful in a sense of, bringing their caring impulses. They care about what happens. This is not taken lightly and done sloppily. There's a kind of intellectual and cognitive and heart-based craftsmanship going on here. It's like somebody who is a great artist or craftsman at something. They care about what's going to happen, and they put the attention and resources and time into it that it requires to come up with a really good result. So wisdom is about doing that with life's issues and with how we deal with life's issues. So I have explore, which has a open-ended kind of quality to it. We're exploring. We're not going to stop short. We're going to adventure in this and that and the other, and see what are the factors going on here. Discerning is like looking clearly, not having sloppy perception, looking at noting what's important and what isn't important, what is irrelevant that is being pushed into this to this issue, and weighing. It's like, okay, is this better or worse than that? Does this make more sense than that? There's a sense of comparison. That's the weighing. Some people don't like the term because it has a weightiness, a heaviness to it. And I don't think that deliberation requires heaviness, but it does require a lot of different comparing kinds of energy in your mind and your heart. And it's also creative. It's not saying, you can have deliberation that chooses between 2 or 3 options, but the most kind of deliberation that is wise involves an engaging with many options and creating new options. One process uses choice creation, creating options beyond what is given to us. And envisions has a larger sense of where we want to go and what's the role of this thing that we're trying to deal with in the longer term benefits and excitements. So we don't jump to conclusions. Jump to conclusions is very descriptive. Here's the end of the road and we want to get there quickly, so we're going to jump over all those other factors and get to the end rapidly. And that's all fine and good, but it's no way to do wisdom. Wisdom is going to go the path and see what's needed. Sometimes the jumping happens in one's intuition, but if you're deliberating together, your intuition is being checked by other people's intuition. So the jumping is much more difficult together to do as a group, unless you've done the work. If at the point you've done the work, as the indigenous people say, we talk until there's nothing left but the obvious truth, and suddenly the obvious truth shows up and you go, oh, we've arrived. We didn't jump to the conclusion, we walked all the way, and we turned the corner and there it was. We may not have seen it earlier, but we know this is where we were going. This is what this conversation was meant to result in. And not getting trapped by assumptions. And there are particular methods to help us raise our assumptions, look at our assumptions. And if we're working together and we have disagreements and concerns about what each other are saying, that can help us not be trapped by assumptions. And inviting people who are very different from who happens to be here now to be included in the conversation also can help us not get trapped by assumptions. But our assumptions can blind us because they're assumptions. We assume them. We look right through them. They're transparent to us. And individuals have assumptions and groups can have assumptions. and being able to be helped to recognize that we have lenses on that are causing us to see things in particular ways and miss other things. And we want wisdom. We want to not miss anything that's important if we can help it. So any work we can do getting beyond our fixed assumptions is very productive. So anything that helps us raise, raise up, bring into our attention, and with care, consider, reflect on a healthy range of factors. What is ideally everything that is really relevant, plus a few more things that may not seem relevant at first. I actually developed a whole theory of relevance plus. You include everything that's relevant, plus a few others, because you can never know in an interconnected world what's totally irrelevant, and you having things which are not obviously relevant added into the mix often creates surprising breakthrough insights. And somebody's perspective. There's a great story of people who are trying to discuss the shoe business, who was trying to discuss what it should do next. It was having trouble, and a rent-a-cop guard in the warehouse where they're having this meeting wandered over and suggested that they create a new kind of boot for these military kind of quasi-military people like guards that are more comfortable than the usual boot, but have that militaristic image that supports their work. And they created that and made millions of dollars. And the guard wasn't even part of the conversation. So welcoming him in to spread the insight, create new options that weren't there before. And to do that, consider a healthy range of factors before we act, and then as we act, both as we talk and as we take action, to include this healthy range, this diversity, which is harder to, which counters the desire to move quickly and dive into something. The diving into things prematurely is a good way to describe what's destroying us, the civilization. So wise democracy recognizes that dynamic, the value of that kind of work, caring work in our caring cognitive process might be a good way to describe deliberation. And there's so many different forms of that and dimensions to it that a wise democracy would attend to that and institutionalize, say, here are institutions, citizen deliberative councils or whatever, that we are going to do on a regular basis under certain circumstances to ensure that we're not overlooking things unnecessarily, and if we are overlooking things, that they get brought into the deliberation early on when they're discovered rather than being pushed aside. So having a culture of deliberation is what the wise democracy is largely about. And citizen deliberative councils, deliberative polling, dynamic facilitation, I just think of it as a very high level, state-of-the-art deliberation. And I could put, just because it's a tool for deliberation of this kind, Bohm dialogue, because it is specifically about clarifying assumptions, suspending them, looking at them, letting them sit there for inspection,